that Pierre Bonbon was a restaurateur of uncommon qualifications, no man who, during the reign, frequented the little cafe in the cul-de-sac Lefebvre at Rouen, will, I imagine, feel himself at liberty to dispute. That Pierre Bonbon was, in an equal degree, skilled in the philosophy of that period, it is, I presume, still more especially undeniable. His pâté à la fois were beyond doubt immaculate. But what pen can do justice to his essays sur la nature, his thoughts sur l'homme, his observations sur la spirit? If his omelets, if his fricandeau were inestimable, what literature of that day would not have given twice as much for an idée de bonbon as for all the trash of the idées of all the rest of the savants? Bonbon had ransacked libraries which no other man had ransacked, had read more than any other would have entertained a notion of reading, had understood more than any other would have conceived the possibility of understanding. And although, while he flourished, there was not wanting some authors at Rouen to assert that his dicta evinced neither the purity of the Academy nor the depth of the Lyceum, although, mark me, his doctrines were by no means very generally comprehended, still it did not follow that they were difficult of comprehension. It was, I think, on account of their self-evidency that many persons were led to consider them abstruse. It is to Bonbon, but let this go no further. It is to Bonbon that Kant himself is mainly indebted for his metaphysics. The former was indeed not a Platonist, nor strictly speaking an Aristotelian, nor did he, like the modern Leibniz, waste those precious hours which might be employed in the invention of a frequency or facilii gradu, the analysis of the sensation, and frivolous attempts at reconciling the obstinate oils and waters of ethical discussion. Not at all. Bonbon was laconic. Ionic. Bonbon was equally italic. He reasoned a priori, he reasoned a posteriori. His reasons were innate or otherwise. He believed in George of Trebizond. He believed in Bosserine. Bonbon was emphatically a bonbonist. I've spoken of the philosopher in his capacity of a restaurateur. I would not, however, have any friend of mine imagine that in fulfilling his hereditary duties in that line, our hero wanted a proper estimation of their dignity and importance. Far from it. It was impossible to say that in which branch of his profession he took the greater pride. In his opinion, the powers of the intellect held intimate connection with the capacities of the stomach. I am not sure, indeed, that he greatly disagreed with the Chinese, who hold that the soul lies in the abdomen. The Greeks, at all events, were right, he thought, who employed the same word for the mind and the diaphragm. By this I do not mean to insinuate a charge of gluttony, or indeed any other serious charge to the prejudice of the metaphysician. If Pierre Bonbon had his failings in what great man has not 1,000. If Pierre Bonbon, I say, had his failings, they were failings of very little importance. Faults indeed which, in other tempers, have often been looked upon rather in the light of virtues. As regards one of these foibles, I should not even have mentioned it in this history, but for the remarkable prominency, the extreme alto relievo, in which it jutted out from the plane of its general disposition, he can never let slip an opportunity of making a bargain. Not that he was avaricious, no. It was by no means necessary to the satisfaction of the philosopher that the bargain should be to his own proper advantage, provided a trade could be effected, a trade of any kind, upon any terms or under any circumstances. A triumphant smile was seen for many days thereafter to enlighten his countenance, and a knowing wink of the eye to give evidence of his sagacity. At any epoch, it would not be very wonderful if a humor so peculiar as the one I have just mentioned should elicit attention and remark. At the epoch of our narrative, had this peculiarity not attracted observation, there would have been room for wonder indeed. It was soon reported that upon all occasions of the kind, the smile of Bonbon was found to differ widely from the downright grin with which he would laugh at his own jokes, or welcome acquaintance. Hints were thrown out of an exciting nature, stories that were told of perilous bargains made in a hurry, and of repented of at leisure, and instances were adduced of unaccountable capacities, vague longings, and unnatural inclinations planted by the author of all evil for wise purposes of his own. The philosopher had other weaknesses, but they are scarcely worthy our serious examination. For example, there are few men of extraordinary profundity who are found wanting in an inclination for the bottle. Whether this inclination be an exciting cause, or rather a valid proof, of such profundity, it is a nice thing to say. Bonbon, as far as I can learn, did not think of the subject adapted to minute investigation, nor do I. Yet in the indulgence of a propensity of so truly classical, it is not to be supposed that the restaurateur will lose sight of that intuitive discrimination which was wont to characterize, at one and at the same time, his essays and his omelets. In his exclusions, in his seclusions, the Vinde Bourgeonnet had its allotted hour, and there were appropriate moments for the Côte de Rome. With him, Salternay was to Medoc what Catullus was to Homer. He would sport with his syllogism in sipping Saint Pere, but unravel an argument over Clos de Vosges, and upset a theory in a torrent of Chambertin. Well, had it been if the same quick and sense of propriety had attended him in the peddling propensity to which I have formerly alluded, but this was by no means the case. Indeed, to say the truth, that trait of mine in the philosophic Bonbon did begin at length to assume a character of strange intensity and mysticism, and appeared deeply tinctured with the diablerie of his favorite German tale studies. To enter the little cafe in the cul-de-sac Lefebvre was, at the period of our tale, to enter the sanctum of a man of genius. Bon was a man of genius. There was not a sous cuisinier in Rouen who could not have told you that Bon was a man of genius. His very cat knew it and forbore her to whisk her tail in the presence of a man of genius. His large water dog was acquainted with the fact. Upon the approach of his master, betrayed his sense of inferiority by a sanctity of deportment, a debasement of the ears, and a dropping of the lower jaw, not altogether unworthy of a dog. It is, however, true that much of this habitual respect might have been attributed to the personal appearance of the metaphysician. A distinguished exterior will, I am constrained to say, have its way even with the beast. And I am willing to allow much in the outward man of the restaurateur calculated to impress that imagination of the quadruped. There's a peculiar majesty about the atmosphere of the little grate, if I may be permitted so equivocal an expression, which mere physical bulk alone will be found at all times inefficient in creating. If, however, Bon was barely 3 feet in height, and if his head was diminutively small, still it was impossible to behold the rotundity of his stomach without a sense of magnificence near bordering upon the sublime. In its size, both dogs and men have seen a type of his acquirements and its immensity of fitting habitation for his immortal soul. His immortal soul. I might here, if it so please me, dilate upon the matter of habiliment and other mere circumstances of the external metaphysician. I might hint that the hair of our hero was worn short, combed smoothly over his forehead, and surmounted by a conical-shaped white flat flannel cap and tassels. That his pea-green jerkin was not after the fashion of those worn by the common class of the restaurateurs that day, that the sleeves were something fuller than the reigning costume permitted, that the cuffs were turned up, not as usual in that barbarous period, with cloth of the same quality and color as the garment, but facing the more fanciful matter with a parti-colored velvet of Genoa, or that his slippers were of a bright purple, curiously filigreed, as might have been the manufactured in Japan, but for the exquisite pointing of the toes, and the yellow satin-like material called amiable, that his sky-blue cloak, resembling in the form of a dressing wrapper, and richly bestudded all over with crimson devices, floated cavalierly upon his shoulders like a mist of the morning, and that his tout ensemble gave rise to the remarkable words of Benvenuto. The improvisators, the Beatrice of Florence. That whether it was difficult to say whether Bon was indeed a bird of paradise, or rather the very paradise for perfection, I say, expatiate upon all these points if I pleased, but I forbear merely personal details to be left to historical novelists. They are beneath the moral dignity of the matter of fact.